Well, good evening and welcome back. We're going to be having Dr. Patrick Slattery on tonight. We're going to be discussing what I meant to discuss earlier, and that is the position of the international Jewry with respect to the power structure in Israel and how the interests of Israel are no longer, in my opinion, the interests of the world Jewish elite that control our countries. I see Israel as a burden that will be cut by the international Jewish elite so that they can continue on with their parasitism. I've been studying Oliver P. Ravello and ancient Jewish history, and I'm learning that most of what we know about the tales pertaining to Jews and their relationships with different peoples in history are mostly Jewish lies and myths. And I've been slowly learning that Jews have always existed as a people parasitically from host nations, and that Oliver P. Ravello has been able to cite Greek and Roman ancient historians and statesmen saying that wherever any people began to build a civilization that produced material wealth, the Jews would show up. And I'm eager now to learn more about the Jewish colonies that have been forming in the areas around China for the last 2,000 years, which I was shocked. I thought the Jews first entered into China with Mao, but now I'm learning that there have been Jews in China for quite some time, and that they pass oftentimes as Chinese. This is something I'd like for a Chinese nationalist to reach out to me with, if you have any information on this, because I'm only finding this from Oliver P. Ravello, and this is something I would very much like to see reproduced somewhere else, in someone else's writings. I try to get things from more than one source before I consider it to be well, true. And it just sounds too crazy to be true, although so far the stuff I've checked up on from Ravello has been pretty spot on. And this is scary to think that Jews have been in China for that long. Although he also cites Jewish sources stating that they brag about this. So let's see. So I'll be having Dr. Patrick Slattery, a doctor of political economy, joining me in a few minutes here. And I'm looking forward to him joining up. And let's see. Start. Okay. All right. So I will look. So a lot of nonsense here in the chat. Yeah, I'm enjoying these trolls. You guys want to ask me about chemtrails and 5G and flat Earth and all that shit? Let me see if I can't get a mod in here. I need a mod to deal with this bird chat. If you mention 5G or chemtrails, you're going to be banned from the chat. I don't know who you are, Lord Killj, so I won't let you mod. Okay, so questions while we're waiting for our guest. Changstein. Oh my. Well, there's going to be a few more minutes before he's able to join us. So, anyone in the chat, you can call the 1-800 number here. Let me pull that up here. In the... There we go. I'll take calls while I'm waiting for my guest. I'll be posting the 1-800 number. Okay, looks like Dr. Slattery is ready to join, so I will. Okay. Your connection is too weak. Hogwash. Huh. So I won't be taking calls right now after all. Let me try this. connection too weak, my ass. There we go. We'll put Dr. Slattery next to the speaker. Dr. Slattery, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, let me figure out how to put this thing on loud. Speaker, here we go. So, Dr. Slattery, care to introduce yourself, your educational title, your credentials?
Well, I'm a human being, and I observe things and I notice things. I am a former political science professor, and I now do a lot of radio and podcasts, like Dr. Duke Show and Stormfront Radio, and I have my own show, National Bugle Radio, which I advise everybody to go to. It's really good.
Now, I was thinking about taking in callers like you do on Radio Stormfront now and again. Would you be willing to take callers?
Sure.
Oh, disregard that. I don't have a way of... I'm using this device for that, so I don't have a way of doing that actually right now. So I was talking about earlier before you joined, just kind of doing a monologue, thinking that the Israel is becoming really a burden to international Jewry, I'd say. Would you agree that at some point there might come a choice that the Jew bankers and Jew media controllers and Jew setters of our educational policies and such might have to choose between continued control over our countries and continued support for Israel?
Yeah, there is, what unifies Jews as a tribe is that they have a tendency, I think a much stronger tendency than almost any non-Jew, to wake up thinking, what's good for the Jews? What's good? And their behavior is motivated about what's good for the Jews. Now, the thing is, what's good for the Jews in Israel and what's good for the Jews in the diaspora aren't all the same thing.
Would you say the gulf between the two are widening now, Dr. Slattery?
Maybe, yeah. I think that's a real issue. It's something that always has to be looked at. The mainstream of the diaspora Jews, the Jews in the United States, have never had it so good. They really have it. They have it good. They've got a great deal of, and I think this is what you're getting at. They have a great deal of control over what's going on here. They dominate our elite, and yet when the state of Israel, and they support Israel. They support Israel very strongly, but that support gets embarrassing because of, first of all, because of the atrocities that Israel carries out against the Palestinians, the wars that it conjures up around the Middle East, and the fact that the way the Israeli Jews run Israel and their values are just so contrary, 100-degree polar opposites of the values that the Jewish elite in the United States tries to not just impose on us, but make the case that that's what defines us, that our values, open borders and trannies and everything, this is what defines us as a people. This is what defines us as a nation.
So Israel, living by its Paleolithic genocidal tribal roots, when it kind of mirroring what they did when they ran into Greek and Semitic tribes in the Levant, that being completely obvious to the world how they're committing genocide there and doing terrible things to the indigenous people, I think that betrays how they feel about us. And I think that they realize that Israel being codified how Jews treat other people with a minority being genocided there is waking people up. They could have Israel and control of our countries, but not with the internet, because sometimes it's hilarious running into Jews like I did in front of AIPAC and other places and confronting them about what the Israelis do, and you have proof in your hand that they're doing it and they deny it. And then they try and say, oh, those aren't real Jews, or oh this, oh that. And they can't distance themselves far enough away from Israel, and I think it's hilarious watching them squirm.
Because it's obvious when people look And the question becomes, well, how do they keep it secret? And of course, things aren't really secret. Then it's not really so much that things are secret, but there's this taboo, and they haven't been able to enforce the taboo. But on the American left, the political left, the Ilhan Omars and the uh, Palestinian solidarity committees on universities and whatnot, they see at least part of what's going on. They see the contradiction between the values that we are supposed to uphold, that our Jewish elite tells us to uphold,
Yep.
and that these leftists themselves have been socialized into and tend to believe in, and then this polar opposite of what takes place in Israel.
Yeah, it's from supporting ISIS so direct. Let's talk about the things that the Jewish state does. The Jewish state supports genocide against ethnic and religious minorities, the most sacred of cows. The Jewish state commits terrorist attacks, so the left-wing Jews, ethnic and religious minorities getting genocided, whether it be the Palestinians via IDF direct confrontation or indirectly through ISIS and al-Nusra and al-Qaeda, which is plenty of proof out there that the Israelis, the Jewish state's been backing them. So number one, that completely destroys the Jews' narrative that Jews can fit in on the left in our host cultures. I mean, when you give the Jews their own military and their own state without goyim intermediaries, they straight up commit genocide, like a Paleolithic tribe of chimpanzees that are raping all the women and killing all the men and bashing all the babies' heads against rocks after.
I think you're bad mouthing chimpanzees, frankly. I mean.
And on the other hand, the Jewish state commits massive amounts of terrorism, undermines our national security, and does all of these other terrible things in this wonderfully illustrative way that no Jews in this country, even with the worst of their treason and being 80 and 90% of the spies for the Soviet Union and all of their being the worst leakers for both the fission bomb and the hydrogen bomb, as well as a complete roster of all of our overseas agents, the Jews in this country that commit treason cannot hold a candle in terms of the terrorism and stuff that the Jews in Israel do in the Jewish state. And so Ben Shapiro, anytime anyone runs into Ben Shapiro, I mean, you should just play back the recording of the terrorist attack on the USS Liberty, the Israeli pilot saying, "Yep, we're going to attack this American ship. Yep, can you give me the countdown in Hebrew?" Or just the pictures of the Jews that were captured planting IEDs, improvised explosive devices, in our military bases in Egypt in the Levant affair, right up to, yeah, I'll say it, 9/11, Jewish fingerprints all over it. And this was direct connections to the Jewish state, so it's almost like the Jews are trying to put on an act and do a jig and everything, and in real time their state is doing the opposite of everything they're saying. And there's the internet now, so all of the bad goyim can notice that Jews have two faces, one for privately to other Jews and one to the world. And this isn't all Jews, but it's almost all of them. And so
Well, it's their group, it's their behavior as a group. I mean, you can find lots and lots of individuals who are very, very nice, but to the extent that Jews are operating as a group, it is in a way that you just described.
Yeah, and the thing is when they don't have a bunch of front goyim to hide behind, because it's not like the Jews are going to make a Palestinian their prime minister as like a Shabbos goy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not like they would have Trump, or, well, maybe Trump had his heart in the right place at one point, but not like they'd have Bill Clinton, or George Herbert Walker Bush or Ronald Reagan. That's a Shabbos goy they want. But they couldn't take Arafat and make him the Shabbos goy leader of Israel, the nominal leader. So Jews can't hide their terrible deeds behind the face of a non-Jew in Israel. And I have to say, and a lot of people are going to give me
heat. Up, but I think I can figure out how they do. But please go ahead.
Well, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to, people are going to take this sound bit out of context, but this is a whole sentence with prepositional phrases. So long as Jews continue to be in power in the United States and in Europe and over all the other countries, with the exception of the axis of evil, I thank God every day that the state of Israel still exists to be a bludgeon to beat the Jews in power in our countries with. It would be so much harder to criticize Jewish power and drive the Jews out of power in this country if the state of Israel didn't exist. And before my Twitter account before I was banned for life from Twitter, despite my having been consistently a presidential and senatorial candidate, which violates a whole bunch of laws, but Twitter doesn't care. I messaged first. I went to Google Translate and I typed out, "Are you ready to be sacrificed like a lamb by the international Jewish bankers that see you as a burden?" And I translated it to Hebrew with Google Translate, and then I tweeted that at Benjamin Netanyahu. Just like, you gotta be left out to dry, and I'm going to be laughing the whole damn time. It's gonna be great.
I don't know how good the Google Translate the Hebrew is, but I hope it was translated. I hope nothing was lost in the translation. But here's the thing about the Goy, the Sabbath Goy front. So it's not exactly like, Israel could have a non-Jewish prime minister, but the Chomskyite narrative,
yep,
that Israel does these things, but Israel does these things because it's a pawn of American power. It's a pawn of the American military-industrial complex, and so that's how they get away with it. And it's been going on for a long time. And so, when you say it's the Gulf widening, well, the Gulf, there's certainly a Gulf, but, there has been for a long time. There's been these contradictions for a long time. And, the Chomskyite narrative has worked on the left for a long time.
Not anymore. It's not working anymore. But it's just people are afraid to speak out. So
people are afraid to speak out.
But the people on the left are so awake. It's just the people on the left tend to be cowards now. In the 90s and early 2000s, when I was in school, the people on the left, they had moral courage. But now it's like they have to ask the blue check marks for permission to say stuff. So it's the command structure of what you would call the left is so strong. If they don't see the blue check mark saying it, they won't say it. So these people, they lived a virtue signal. So what used to be a hardcore left, if you want to call it that, in the 90s, that actually had principles, as misguided as they were, they had courage, and they don't have it anymore. These people won't risk anything for anyone.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you go back to the 90s, and you go back far enough...
we have a developer software asked, what does that mean, Chomsky? Would you want to explain the paradigm of controlled opposition with Chomsky?
Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor.
So Noam Chomsky he's a linguist from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He must be close to 90 years old now, but he's still active. And he rose to great prominence because, and this is funny because he is the world's most renowned linguist. The only language he speaks is English and then a little bit of Hebrew, but he doesn't even speak Hebrew well. But yet he came up with these theories about language, which we don't have to go into. But he rose to great prominence in the 1960s, and then, of course, with the Vietnam War going on, he was one of the most outspoken. He was an outspoken critic of the Vietnam War, and that kind of catapulted him to this, prominence in the left, and he's developed a cult-like following. And he's always been very critical of Israel, and he does, he's written a
but
number
he only delivers certain criticisms of Israel.
That's the thing. So he's critical. His critiques of both Israel and American foreign policy get a lot right, but there are massive omissions. And his basic view of Israel is that all these bad things that Israel does because it's a pawn of American power. So it's the American state that is Well, and Israel's basically a puppet of America.
So basically, Americans got sick of being colonial Europeans, so we had to start another second-degree colony in the Middle East. But whites couldn't do it anymore, so we had the Jews do it for us anyway. And this is more that Jewish doublespeak, because Jews are fellow white people. Of course, it's a white colony, and we're the white mother country. So
Yeah.
that's
So it's a way of criticizing the actions of Israel, but not laying any blame
on Jews.
At Jews, on Jews.
But
no.
blaming white people.
Blame goes to whites.
Yep. Blame goes to whites because Jews are just fellow whites. And let's talk about Cheney. Let's talk about the useful idiots. Let's blame the figurehead. So Noam Chomsky is extremely clever. And this is, the Jews have a history of doing this. Have you ever read Ravello P. Oliver, Doctor?
No.
Oh my God, you're in for a treat. Alex Linder, as spicy as he may be, he does a great narration of it, and it's a pretty quick book. I think it's only like 200 pages, and really all you need to hear is part one. Shit it'll knock your socks off. You won't believe the level of subversion. Now, this is a guy that was in the OSS, or a prototype of the CIA, so to say, in the 1940s, and you just got to listen to this book. It's crazy. Alex Linder, go to VNN forum and just VNN Victor November space audiobooks, and then when you're there, Control or Command F, depending on whether you're Windows or Apple, find just Control F or Command F Oliver, and just it's America's Decline. The levels of subversion and trickery in controlling the opposition. This is the most concise version of it. Now, Dr. Duke has touched on it in his books, but this guy focuses exclusively how the Jews trick people. And it goes right into E. Michael Jones style, without the religious aspects. Just their understanding of psychology, how to control crowds, how to frame things where Jews don't appear in the Venn diagram of analysis. It's hilarious. It's blackpilling. So you're listening to it, and I've got levels of rage listening to it. Not, I'm well disciplined, so I went for a walk instead of screaming. This was just levels of holy crap, black pills and red pills that I hadn't had in years. Not since I first woke up to the JQ. And somebody warned me that Ravello P. Oliver would be a big black pill. But actually, it was Mr. Bond in his song that he wrote praising my Jew naming tour over the summer, where he said Ravello P. Oliver, and I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's the first time I've heard of it.
But this is a guy that was in top-level intelligence for the OSS, just in real time watched the Jews pulling the wool over the American people's eyes, and he and all of his friends who had been woke to the JQ, pretty much anyone in intelligence during World War II, were just waiting for enough people to come forward, and he thought the Jews were going to be chased out of America, with everyone with birch branches chasing them out after the war. And when he realized that they weren't being chased out and that they were actually becoming more powerful, that's when he really started studying Jewish subversion through the ages. He went back and has found Jewish subversion in Rome, Greece, Anatolia, the level of analysis that Oliver did. And he is a doctor of linguistics and also fluent in Latin and such. He was incredibly, and just so well-cited and just so very deep. You have to go back and listen to some parts twice because it's very condensed. It's like it's like distilled red pills, and you got to be careful with it because there's some real kick to it. Ravello P. Oliver. You think you might get a chance to listen to part one? It's just like 2 hours. Maybe you could listen to it while you're driving. You can download the MP3, and you go to VNN. Just type in to Google or DuckDuckGo. Both of those are Jewish search engines, I know. Until one of you goyim makes a non-Jewish search.
Jewish too?
Yep. I saw the evidence the other day. It's conclusive. I forget the name of the guy. The founder was a Jew. It's conclusive, though. I just can't... I know you're big on citations. I just can't remember the name right now.
Yeah.
So... just go, everyone listening, I want you to listen to part one. So part one is broken up into 2 or 3 parts by Alex Linder, And yes, he's an exto poster, but still, you should listen to what he has to say, because there's less exto posting in this,
What is exto posting?
calling for extermination.
Oh,
No, in his
that word.
commentary, yeah,
Okay, I only just learned the definition of Fed posting maybe a day ago. I hear people saying it, and I guess exto posting is ipso facto Fed posting.
yeah, but his commentary, he loses his cool and he just lets his rage well, actually no, I think he's cool and calculated, but his commentary and his readings of audiobooks and his ability to put in historical context many things is just once every 90 minutes or so you're going to hear him exto post for like 5 seconds and then
So yeah, I mean we have a very difficult problem, and I think we need to maintain our calm and maintain our cool,
oh
which
no,
can be hard.
absolutely, that's why I go for walks, but what I'm saying is this is the only copy of the audiobook I know of. And if you
Mhm.
just listen to the first like 2 or 3 hours of it, he's broken up into maybe that's 2 parts or 3 parts it takes to listen to the whole part one. And it's just incredible the level of subversion and trickery these Jews have been engaged in this country. That book is one of the best books that I've listened to yet, and that's America's Decline. If you want to read the text instead of listening to it, but I just when I was going through my electronics today, and I set up my whole. I'm getting ready for a sound mixer to come, so I can not do boomer tech with Collins. I
Boomer tech, I like that. Yeah,
yeah.
I've been doing a lot of boomer tech today. I got projects I'm working on, and yeah, boomer tech all the way. Very analog, even not even digital.
Well,
Uh,
right. What boomer tech is, instead of having a soundboard and a sound mixer an audio mixer that you patch calls through and make it all uh, one, whatever you call it, one channel or whatever, where you don't. Basically putting my Skype on a different device on speaker in front of a microphone. That's boomer tech. Having a sound mixer where I have two wires coming out of the audio jack on this phone. One of them is send, one of them is receive,
yeah, that's
and patching
that.
that through that is not boomer tech because then
Okay,
you
well, what I do for National Bugle Radio is boomer tech,
yeah.
and when I get my dogs to bark, that is a little Casio, 30-year-old Casio keyboard, and they can bark all they want. So
Yeah, no, they have drops nowadays. They don't have soundboards like that. They have actual drops which approximate soundboards. But what I'm saying is, yeah, somebody posted in the chat also, Linder is anti-Christian. Yes, Linder is, but also, there are lots of people that wrote lots of things. For example, Aristotle believed that there should be slaves. I love Aristotle. I don't believe in slavery. So Alex Linder has very well read man, excellent analysis of Jews, excellent ability to put commentary that contextualizes. He knows what the average American does and does not know, and he'll put in the commentary that gives historical context. I'm just saying, once every 90 minutes, you have to tolerate him calling for exto, and if you can tolerate that for 5 seconds once every 90 minutes, the rest of it is just pure gold. And he does rap on Christians, and that's okay. He's not in politics. He doesn't have. He's just being honest, and so it's not critical to his analysis, his individual stuff that he throws in there, but the historical context that he gives is golden. He's one of the best audiobook narrators with commentary I've come across. And what I'm really challenging all of you to listen to, and the audience and you, Dr. Slattery, is just take the time to read part one or listen to the first 3 parts of the audiobook that Linder has put out for Ravel P. Oliver's America's Decline. And that is just so full of red pills. It's the most condensed red pill ever I've ever come across. It's more condensed even than the Nameless War.
yeah, well, we have to learn about Jewish power, because the essence of Jewish power, at least in the words of Gilad Atzmon, and here I'm quoting an Israeli Jew,
Yep.
but the essence of Jewish power is the ability to stifle the discussion of Jewish power. So we have to learn about it. We have to learn how to, think about it, how to understand it. how to listen to it in the case of listening to what you just described, where there's a lot of maybe a lot of very sound analysis, and then the exto post, if that's how you call it, every now and then. But very importantly, most importantly, at the end of the day, is learning how to talk about it, how to talk about it effectively, so that we. Because I'm convinced all we need to do is wake up our people. That's all we need to do. I don't think this extermination stuff. We are so big
Yeah,
and so strong.
yeah, I know.
We just
Dr.
need to stand
Slattery,
up and take control of our destinies, and that's all.
I agree. And Jews have been expelled so many times, and it's something that happens on and of its own. I almost wish that I'd never
And
advocated.
here you want to ask: they've been expelled so many times. Has it worked?
No.
It
Um,
hasn't worked. So what's the point?
no.
No, we have to just learn how to stand up for ourselves and be firm. And you can be firm with kids without smacking them around. And I think we can be firm with this much smaller group
Well,
without smacking them around. We just
ultimately, the solution to the Jewish question
strong.
won't be a top down mandate of the government. The solution to the Jewish question will be provided by the people, and that will probably be expulsion. I just, that's the way it's gone down in history. I can objectively read history and say this is what was going on, this was the result. And I think that,
I don't think so.
I think it's a
Nobody has a
natural thing.
crystal ball, but
It's group psychology. When groups become angry and when groups realize that a certain group is behind something, they don't make exceptions.
it could. I mean, it could happen, but I don't think that's the solution. Look how many times there's been expulsion, and that hasn't really solved things. I think it's a matter of learning how to be honest, not and be confident, and not worry about who you offend, and
Yeah.
the Jewish power resources are all resources that they have only because of our cooperation. Only with our cooperation do they have money in their banks.
Well, if you read Oliver, it's beginning to. I think he has a better understanding of the Jews than even MacDonald. Oliver, what they have, the power of the propaganda, it is not. So there are a few people that are bought off. Like in the French Revolution, there were a few people they caught, doing questionable things in the equivalent of speakeasies back then. And there were people they got into gambling debts, etc., etc. And I mean, you can't really say that we're responsible for a few people in the elite becoming beachheads for Jewish intrigue by getting themselves entrapped. I think to generalize and just give the blame that 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 blanket amount of blame to white people, I think that's irresponsible, and I don't think it's accurate either. I think once we truly understand the power of propaganda, and once we truly understand the power of the big lie, once we truly understand just how well these Jews understand psychology and how little they value objectivity or truth, and how they really are they inwardly believe the complete opposite of the universality that they preach. They really are particularists. And I do not think that we can be blamed for having been brainwashed.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, we can't be blamed for being brainwashed. What I think we need the ability to be able to speak. It's not even an ability. It's really the courage, and you know all about courage. We need the courage to be able to speak frankly, without worrying about, frankly and honestly, without worrying about other people's sensitivities, to the same extent that we have long been willing to endure other people speaking negatively about us without us getting bent out of shape. We let other people speak dishonestly
Yeah.
about us, and we don't even put up a counter argument. We've developed such thick skins regarding what other people say about
That's
us,
that,
and yet
Dr.
we
Slattery. I
walk
think that's
shells around them.
I think that's not the way to say it. It's not a thick skin. It's
Yeah,
demoralization.
it's
I think
not.
there's
Well, what is it?
demoralization. Being a beaten dog.
Demoralization.
I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah,
it's
yeah.
toughness. I think it's being a beaten dog. I think there's a difference, a big difference between being a dog that's been beaten into cowering in a corner and not defending itself and not offering any self-defense in the face of annihilation, in the face of genocide. There's a difference between that and being able to turn the other cheek, or having been,
Well, okay,
being able
that's
to shrug off pain.
so I can. Well, we're not in a debate here, so I don't have to concede a point. But
Okay.
I think your analogy is better than mine. The thick skin is not the right word. And this is the process of learning how to talk about things. That's what we're trying to do here. Yeah, we are demoralized, and because we're demoralized, we're willing to endure. We're willing to endure people saying all sorts of things about us, and we need the courage to be able to speak honestly in our own defense, and to offer critiques um, against others, in particular, this Jewish power, without worrying about their sensitivities, because they're not worried about ours.
Now, I think that understanding just how Jews subvert people speaking out against them, and understanding how they subverted, for example, Buckley, and how they subverted people who even betrayed their own fathers, like Buckley did, and betrayed all of their own friends to throw them under the bus to make a little bit extra money. I think we're going to have to be on the lookout for that, because there are going to be outlets like Alex Jones, not that someone that talks about flat Earth and aliens and 5G is ever going to be taken seriously by the public. And by the way, guys, unless you're a dedicated, entertainment late night show that's dedicated just to talking about crazy sounding shit because it's fun when you're drunk or whatever, don't talk about this 5G crap or this.
I don't. What is 5G? I've never heard of that.
So, all of the Hasbro trolls that have tried to get close to me, and this was the thing. A lot of the guys in the GDL, they want anyone who talks about Jews to talk about flat Earth and chemtrails and 5G and all this other stuff that is just a non-issue.
5G, is that like
Yeah,
the 5G cell phone technology? Is that what it is?
yeah, it's just dumb sounding stuff. It's like aliens built the pyramids tier stuff, and that's they want everyone to who talks about Jewish power to talk about aliens building the pyramids, essentially.
Hey, if you're going to talk about aliens building pyramids and whatnot, I think it would be a lot more fun to talk about like the Negro space program.
Oh, I'm not sure what that is.
Look it up on the internet sometime. The Negro space program. It's a lot more fun.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it's not serious, so
Well,
you're not really undermining
well,
yourself.
yeah.
It's
These
fun.
people, these people that fill the chats, they're from Israel, and they're trying to associate craziness with anyone who talks about Jewish power. Because, after all, what word was invented in this? What phrase was invented in the Soviet Union at the same time as as popularized the terms racism and anti-Semitism? They also popularized the term conspiracy theorist, and so they churn
Really?
out a bunch of crazy sounding stuff and call it conspiracy theory, which I guess if that's what they want to call it, then it is. But they also say, yeah, flat Earth, chemtrails, and talking about Jewish power. These
Yeah.
are
No,
conspiracy
no, you're
theories.
right. I
Yeah.
saw, or I was listening maybe two
If
years
you get
ago.
someone near you that starts talking about, and this is advice to anyone in the audience, anyone who talks to you about this 5G is going to kill us all, or aliens building the pyramids, or chemtrails, or any of this, run as fast as
So
you can, because that's a Jew or someone that's stupid enough to be gaslit by Jews.
a couple of years ago, I was in a car and I was listening. Somebody turned on the Joe Rogan. I like to call him Joe Rogan, but the Joe Rogan podcast. And Joe Rogan was talking to somebody. I don't even remember who, and was talking about Jews and Jewish power. And then he compared the whole idea of Jewish power to flat Earth.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, you know. So, but but your point is that if people who are talking about Jewish power are also going to talk about flat Earth or chemtrails, it does make us all look ridiculous.
Yeah,
And it gives Joe Rogan an opportunity to say things like that.
yeah. I'm gonna have mods full time soon. I've got people lining up to mod, and I just need to vet them. But yeah, anyone that talks about, you ready, chemtrails, aliens building the pyramids, flat Earth, or what's the other shit?
There's a lot.
Yeah, any of that shit, you're just going to be banned from the chat because I don't want to be associated with conspiracy theory stuff, and that's exactly what the Jews want us associated with. Now, there are real conspiracies. There's the Israelis being involved in drug trade with South America and our CIA selling drugs and having things to do
Hey,
with
how about the ecstasy epidemic of the 90s?
coming from Israel. Yeah,
Coming from Israel and by way of Belgium, these like diamond traders and whatnot. Yeah, but Antwerp, which is the big Jewish
yeah,
diamond cutting center.
yeah,
Yeah, it was very much a Jewish mafia thing.
yeah. Yeah, but moving on to some other points I wanted to talk about is so what do you think of that Jew that runs Facebook saying anyone who advocates for whites will be banned from the platform? What do you
Yeah,
think of that?
Facebook, Mark Zuckerface, because he gave his berg to his company.
Yeah.
Mark Zuckerface and Sheryl Sandface. Um, well, it's getting blatant, and that's probably a good thing. And it's not as if they were really. It's not as if you could really use Facebook to do much useful anyway.
Well,
So I don't know. It's getting so blatant.
Facebook's how they recruited Anders Breivik. So I and Anders, among many others, were active on Pamela Geller's wall, and we both had hordes of Jew trolls, which we thought, I thought they were just soccer moms from Montana and cowboys from Alaska and all this other stuff, just
So when you
stereotypical.
say Pamela Geller's wall, so a wall is like something in Facebook, right?
Yeah, it's like your Twitter feed. And so Breivik and I, we both were like, wow, this is a group of immigrants we're allowed to criticize. And then we had Jews doing all this, Islam must be destroyed, and let's invade the Middle East, and let's take out the rocket Mecca. And so the Jews radicalized Breivik, and he became one of their useful idiots. He went and attacked a bunch of kids because they were talking about freeing Palestine. And it's only because it was the only outlet we were allowed to criticize in terms of mass immigration and population replacement. We were both firm believers that there was some group, we couldn't put our finger on it, that was behind white genocide. We believed that population replacement was immoral, and we both, he called me St. Patrick one day after I got into an argument with the anti
Who called you St. Patrick?
Anders Breivik.
So this is years ago.
Years in like 2008 and 2009, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I got into it. Now, he didn't tell me. He told me he was writing a book, so I'm sure you've run into lots of guys since you woke up that said, oh, I'm writing a book, and I've got a book that's going to be changing. I've had so many people contact me saying, I'm writing a book, and you're in it, and blah, 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 blah. And, some of them write decent stuff, but Breivik used to say, I like your writings. He liked my paper, Optimal Biological Continuity of the Self, and he was watching as I debated the United Against Fascism, which is like the Antifa of Britain. And basically, without being woke to the Jews, I said that, it's moral for the English to want to continue existing, and the indigenous peoples of Europe have the right to exist and all that. And I just, basically, Jordan, not, what's his name? Who's the guy that won't name the Jew, but he talks about Taylor?
David Icke?
Huh?
David Icke?
No, that's lizard shit. No, Taylor. He won't name the Jew.
Jared Taylor?
Yeah, I didn't even know who Jared Taylor was.
They look white to me.
Yeah, well, I also thought Jews were white at that point too, and
But they do look white.
well, the ones that spent time in Europe do. It's those gene snatching yentas.
Yeah. Mizrahi look Middle Eastern.
Yeah. But what I was gonna say was it was like think about like the frustration that comes with knowing that there's some sort of intentional genocide of your people, and seeing it in real life. You can see your people being wiped out, and you can see how any of them that try and advocate for their group are pretty much just rounded up or censored. And Breivik and I used to talk about this with private messages on Facebook. And, he used to always say, you write such good stuff. And after I spent like 12 hours straight debating like 40 Antifa, they were called United Against Fascism, on the wall of the British Nationalist Party. And I mopped the floor with them. I have a printout somewhere of my debate with them. Although I wasn't aware of Jews at the time, just conceptually, I was defending the right of whites to exist, saying that human rights apply to all, as Dr. Duke would say, expressions of humanity, although I use separate words, just made analogies to nature and stuff. And Breivik was watching, and he went by the name Anders Bering. But we were both gaslit by
No,
these Jews.
you are going to want to. I mean, to any ADL or whatever people who are listening to this, next thing you know, they're going to be calling you an associate of Andrei Breivik.
No, Breivik and I were both victims of Pamela Geller in the ADL that were inciting people
Okay, so
against.
Pamela Geller is the associate of Andrei Breivik.
Yes, it was.
Which, I mean, and on a much more real level too, I suppose.
Pamela Geller is directly responsible for the dead kids in Norway, because all she talked about was needing to, be anti-Islam, and Islam needs to be destroyed and all this crap. And her and the other Jew trolls in Hasbara would locate people that were starting to take the red pill in terms of white genocide happening, and then get us to redirect our anger towards Islam. And Breivik never told me any of the stuff he was going to do. He just simply said, I'm writing a book and you're going to like it. And I'm just like, okay, I look forward to it. And he'd comment on my writings and stuff. And then I was getting ready to leave for boot camp, and then I open up a newspaper and I see his face on the picture. I'm like, Anders? I thought his name was just Anders Bering. I didn't know his last name was Breivik. He went by first and middle name on Facebook. And I'm just like, holy shit. Holy shit.
So you knew what his face looked like?
Yeah, I knew what his face looked like, because the face they used in the newspaper was the same as his profile picture on Facebook. On Facebook, yeah. But that's an example of Jews radicalizing, and that's an example also. The Jews also did that to tons of Lebanese guys and got them to attack Muslims in Lebanon. And then the Jews got to invade when all the people, they gaslit a bunch of Muslims against Christians, and they gaslit a bunch of Muslims against Christians way beyond the natural level of animosity that those two groups would feel in the same environment.
I want to ask you, because there's so much going on that you can't really pay attention to anything, or you can't pay attention to everything. And one thing I really haven't paid a huge amount of attention to is the whole New Zealand thing, although I did see
I haven't had time to keep up on. I don't know. So in Ravello P. Oliver's book, he talks about the difference between disinformation and misinformation. He was an expert in cryptology and sending out. He was involved in the water heater is broken at Midway. The whole sending. You know what I'm talking about?
No, well, I mean, it's a World War II reference, right?
Yeah, so they wanted to see whether or not the Japanese had broken the current set of codes that they had for the U.S. Navy. And so they transmitted out the water heater is broken in code, and then we had broken the Japanese codes, so then we listened, and then the Japanese retransmitted in their encoded thing. Oh, just a heads up for the planes about to attack Midway, their water heater's broken, or their water purifier, I'm sorry, is broken. So, so that type of stuff. So the difference, that's misinformation and disinformation and all that. And Ravello P. Oliver's an expert at knowing what Jews do with misinformation and disinformation and controlling the language of an argument. And it's really such an important book to read. And even though he takes some swings at Christians, and even though he's an atheist, even if you're Christian, you need to read this book, because just like I set aside the stuff where Linder is an exto posting because he's really black-pilled, his narration of Oliver's book and putting it into context, a lot of the historical references, quite objectively, I might add, is critical. Critical that you understand just how Jewish subversion works in connection to intelligence agencies. And this isn't some tinfoil stuff like a lot of these guys that want us to talk about aliens building the pyramids and 5G and all that shit. This is an actual guy that was in the OSS, or the basically the CIA, before they got good at concealing what they did.
Wow. Okay. Anything else? I've been using my brain all day and it's worn out. Is there anything else we need to talk about?
No, I actually have some stuff I need to do for tomorrow, but I thought I'd get you on today and test out I've got my audio wiring done a little bit differently, and I enjoyed talking to you so much last time that I thought it would be good to have you on. And
we'll have to do a lot. And where are you going next with your campaign?
So right now, the first few $100 have started to come in to the P.O. Box 6025 in Albany. My goal is 10,000, and I know some people that said I can get a good bus converted into a RV that gets decent gas mileage, and I can travel around the country doing that. After living on the boat for this long, I'm getting pretty good at the mobile cellular based computing and streaming, knowing what my bottlenecks are. And I could rig up what I've got here plus an additional cellular Windows tablet in an RV and do all of the streaming I wanted, because streaming is the main way I'm going to campaign, because I don't have billions of Jewish dollars or hundreds of millions of Jewish dollars pouring into my campaign. And going around, I'm going to primarily focus on hanging out in military base towns, trying to wake up military personnel, active duty families of military members, going around. I'll go to 29 Palms Marine Corps Base, that town, and just set up a stand in front of the bus, get permission to park the bus somewhere, and just have all of my red pills laid out. All of the different slides and stuff, like a presentation, all of the Ryan Dawson films for the Jewish involvement in 9/11, and just trying to red pill people, go around the country focusing on veterans and military towns, and also trying to reach high school students and college kids, and we'll see where it takes me.
Well, there's a lot could be done with this. This could be a great vehicle for getting a lot accomplished. There's, well, we'll talk about it another time, but caucus states, you could get delegates to these county conventions or district conventions, state conventions, all sorts of things.
I had committeemen. I had a few Republican executive committees in California refuse to condemn me. They were hounded by the ADL. They were hounded by Jewish journalists, and they would not condemn me during my Senate run.
Yeah,
that was the beginning of something.
Yeah, this could be very, very interesting. So I'm looking forward to it, and thank you for having me on your live stream.
Dr. Slattery, can you plug your stuff before you go? Because you do quality stuff, and although I don't always have the time to listen, you have very good commentary, and your understanding of the left, the Jewish way of framing arguments for the left as a finished product is pretty good. You guest host and co-host often on a call-in show, so if you guys like calling in, he's often on Radio Stormfront. Do you want to plug the different places where you are?
Stormfront, yeah. Stormfront Radio, which is on the Rents Radio Network. Let's see, you can call in at 844-769-2944. That is the call-in number, and it is live on weekdays from 10 to 11 Eastern Time.
That's Eastern Time. So if you're out here, that's pretty early. That's
7 to 8 a.m. Yeah, if you call out
on the West Coast. We got a lot of West Coast listeners here. I'm sorry. Keep on going, Dr. Slattery.
Well, and then the next hour is the David Duke Show, which I have a behind the scenes role on that, but I'm sometimes his guest. And then I have a show on Republic Broadcasting Network, which would be start at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 11 a.m. Pacific time. And sometimes it's live and sometimes it's recorded. When it's live, I often take callers. I usually will take callers. So sometimes, once or twice a week, about twice a week usually, there's callers. And that's where I try to have fun and make it fun. But that's too much. That's too much slattery. And so I don't begrudge anybody who doesn't listen to stuff, because it's just too much. So,
well, I very much
on YouTube too. You can find it on YouTube.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Slattery. And if you text me all of that information in the Skype window, which I'm counting the days until the terms of use that were pushed out last May, the new ones for Skype trigger my account deletion. But until then, if you want to throw me all those details, I can throw that in the footnote, or the footnote. I'm getting into books again. The description of the video here, where they can find you. You do good content, and you're an example of someone that came from the opposite end of the spectrum of Jewish dialectical perfidy that I came from. I came from the neoconservative right, and you came from the Chomskyite left.
Well, I'm never exactly a Chomskyite, but yeah, from the left for sure.
Yeah,
more Naderite left than China. Remember, Nader's an Arab.
Oh yeah, Nadir. Yeah, Nader. actually wouldn't mind listening to his stuff, although I'm sure he doesn't mention the Jews enough.
I was once, last thing, I was once walking. It was after a peace demonstration 15 years ago, and ever since 2000, Nader was like, he was targeted violently in the streets, and of course he didn't have Secret Service or dedicated bodyguards. So when he was walking in a city, DC or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
he would just have these impromptu posses of adult men, right? Sturdy looking adult men. And so I was in his posse after one of these demonstrations, and his sister was with us too, and I was having this conversation with his sister, and this was only like, okay, Ralph Nader wasn't party to the conversation, but he was only like 3 feet away. He was like within ear distance. I was talking to somebody else, but his sister was telling me about this map that she's seen, and it's from the Israeli plans for Greater Israel from the Nile to the Euphrates, and she was really really red pilled about Israel and Jewish power. That was his sister.
That was Mike Enoch and Eric Stryker, I believe, took a similar path where they first were outraged by what Israel was doing, and then realized that a lot of the stuff wrong here domestically was Jewish.
Right, yeah. So that's basically my path too.
Well, it's always good as long as we both converged at the truth. I think now I can tell you though, compared to where I was thinking inside the kosher box that the Jews had framed for those of us on that dialectical perfidy side called the right, the level of cognitive dissonance that I had before my awakening, I feel more free now, don't you? Don't you feel more just like things make more sense? There's more objectivity. You're not trying to force any type of you're not trying to force yourself to fit into something, or it just rolls off the tongue now. You don't have to like think to make sure if you're violating any of the virtue signaling criteria. It's
well, I mean, if you want to understand what's going on, it's I think of myself as being like a modern day Galileo, where Galileo, he understood that the Earth was not at the center of the solar system or the universe, and he was an astronomer. And what's the point of doing astronomy when you know everything's bogus? And I was a political scientist, and I was teaching in a university, and I couldn't talk about the fundamental, the most fundamental organizing principle of politics.
Yep.
Just like Galileo,
the Jewish kernel.
The instruments of torture to get him to stop talking about the sun, the idea that the sun was at the center of the universe or the solar system.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, and George Lincoln Rockwell talked about this humility in the face of knowledge and things that challenge what we think we know. If we understand something to be some way, but a better understanding comes about, or something contradicts our deep belief, it takes a strong man to admit that the prior held beliefs were wrong. And that's something I had to do past age 30, which made it all the more painful. The younger we can get kids to wake up to this stuff, the absolute better. And if you need to go, I understand. We did your outro. I'm going to roll into kind of a monologue I have prepared now to close the show.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Slattery.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for yours, Dr. Slattery.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So I wanted to talk about some of the things that make challenging Jewish power difficult is because Jews always make themselves appear to be in the opposition. So, the continuing revolution, this is a Jewish term. So, after the Jews took control of Russia, to make sure that no counter-revolution happened, they made sure the revolution was continuing. E. Uncle Jones writes about the Jewish revolutionary spirit. And the easiest thing to be is in the opposition. The hardest thing to do is to rule. And so long as the Jews who are in power can hide the fact that they're in power, but make it look at the same time like they're struggling against the man, which is some fictitious wasp club in the sky. Like, you have to have strong belief in the supernatural or in something that isn't real to believe that there's still an armchair club of white Anglo-Saxon men smoking cigars that run our country or our government. This is a delusion. It's a myth. This is more far-fetched than gods atop Mount Olympus, because the evidence to the contrary is so strong. But the Jews understand that as long as they continue to appear to be in the opposition, wishing for progress against some type of omnipowerful white elite, they're going to not draw criticism. And that's why I'd like to say, especially if you're first starting out and you don't know quite as much about Jewish history as some of us that have been studying nonstop for a few years, or if you're not as sure in your ability to cite Jewish crimes against humanity, the thing to do is keep yourself in the opposition. Yeah, I've noticed a lot of times Jews want me to state exactly the logistics of whatever I want to do and how I would rule theoretically, when they're the ones in power. That someone in the opposition, like yourself, if you're white, you're in the opposition, you don't have any power, you're the oppressed. Criticize the structural Jewish power. Be in the opposition. Be the person making the criticisms. It's so much easier to be in the opposition. It's every politician's dream to be in the ascendant opposition. And that's what we are in now. Don't let the Jews trick you into framing yourself as someone defending your beliefs as if you already had power, because you have no power. You're white. You're a slave to the Jews. And phrase things as such. Be in the opposition. Don't let the Jews get you on the defensive, on the back foot, on your heel, getting pushed back. Don't let the Jews get you defensive about some theoretical plan you have. Whenever the Jews try and get you to speak in detail about how you'd like to have a perfect society, or when they want you to wax autistic on the logistics of how you'd implement one plan or another, don't do it. Say, well, that's an interesting question, but here's where the Jews are killing babies. Here's where the Jews are, if they're talking about your system that you would have to improve quality of life over time, and they're trying to get you to say something that's taboo, say, well, speaking of children, here's a video of the Jew sniper shooting a pregnant Palestinian woman in the stomach intentionally and wearing a shirt to that effect and bragging about it. If they want to try and get you on the defensive about what to do about whites' role in the slave trade, point out, shut up, Jew. Jews own 70% of the slaving ships across in the transatlantic slave trade. And according to ancient Roman historians, Jews were in charge of the slave trade of all races in the Roman Empire going back 2,000 years ago. Never, ever, ever let a Jew put you on the defensive. The moment the tribe comes screaming at you hysterically, push back. Jews run. I was in D.C. over the weekend, and some of the Jews recognized me from yelling at them in front of AIPAC, and they made snickering remarks, and I just yelled at them with my chest puffed up, "You blood-sucking kikes, get out of my way," and they ran. They ran like little bitches, because Jews are cowards, and if you are offensive in your language, and you come at the Jews verbally, and don't let them put you on the defensive, they run. These Jews ran for the door stoop. Now, this is a physical metaphor for the argumentative, or the verbal conflict. But Jews are cowards. They'll always try and change the subject or slip away like jello through your fingers. And as long as you stay on the offensive and you remember that you have the right to moral outrage and not the Jews, because you are the oppressed, they are the powerful, you won't lose a single argument. Don't let the Jews put you on the defensive. It's like a salesman. You go in, you know what you want. You want the black Ford Ranger 1998 extended cab. Don't let the Jews suggesting. Don't be suggestive. Don't let the Jews let you be, suggestible. Be firm, be on the offensive, and lean into them, because they have a very weak position, and Jews run when you put them on the defensive, or they slip away like jello through your fingers. So never, ever, ever let the Jews start making accusations at you. Just ignore their accusations and just call them out. And that's my advice for the night, ending the show. Always be on the offensive. The moment you let the Jews start to control the argument is the moment you've let them start to make accusations and start to say things about you. Remember, you don't have any power. The Jews have the power. You are the oppressed. And so long as you're willing to go on the offensive in a conversation, you will win. Thanks for tuning in tonight. This has been Patrick Little's 2020 for President, Patrick Little 2020 for President live stream. I've got some stuff to do. Now remember, if you haven't named the Jew yet today, do you have a phone call that you need to make to a loved one? Have a good night.